Hey, so good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Renee Eisenhuth, and I'm a program manager within the Division of Professional Studies. And I want to welcome you to UMBC's Geographic Information Systems Virtual Open House. So we hope you enjoy the presentation, and I'm going to pass it over to the Graduate Program Director and Assistant Graduate Program Director, Dr. Dylan Mahmoudi and Ron Wilson. Thank you so much.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Dylan Mahmoudi, the Graduate Program Director, as Renee just let us know. And Ron Wilson is also on the call. Ron is the Assistant Graduate Program Director, bringing a wealth of experience to the program. And I'll let him talk a little bit more about that when we transition over to Ron in a little bit. What I wanted to do first is start with a little bit about the program's foundation. This program has been re-engineered, I should say, from the ground up to focus on three core aspects of GIS: the people's lives and livelihoods, societal engagement, or society and power relations, and environmental conditions such as sustainability. And what we want to do with these three things is think about them in a scientific manner, a rigorous methodological manner that is sensitive to space as a way to improve or I guess get at better decision making within space. One of the other core concepts that we want to do with the program is engage with critical GIS. And the reason that we do that is because it brings in a variety of other sub-disciplines within geography and the social sciences. One of those is science and technology studies. So how does science and technology impact society, and conversely, how do the technologies that we develop then reflect back on society? We also engage with core geographic theory and concepts. So if you've ever taken a GIS class, you know of Tobler's Law. Tobler's Law is a good way to kind of start to think about the way in which things that are similar to each other tend to be spatially near each other. So we take that principle and we interrogate the world through that lens. We also engage with computing. Broadly speaking, what we do with the program is engage with things like the R programming language, a little bit of Python. We want to develop technical skills through the program as a way to engage both job skills, but also at the bleeding edge of what is GIS. And lastly, one of the things that we do through all of our courses is engage directly with scientific or spatial communication. How do we communicate the things that we see, the patterns that we observe on the map into language that can be understood by anyone and everyone? I'm going to hand it over to Ron to introduce himself and to talk a little bit about the core objectives of the GIS Master's Program.
Hi, yes, my name is Ron Wilson. I'm Dylan's assistant. We've been developing this program for a while now through the re-engineering, and we're presenting this to you with the foundation of what Dylan had just mentioned, with 8 particular objectives that we're looking at to distinguish our program from other programs. And so the first one is for, as this is critical GIS, which is an extension of that critical cartography, where we're interrogating GIS. We're not just learning how to use GIS. We're not just learning how to do techniques and make maps and conduct spatial analysis. We're looking to interrogate what we are doing as professionals in this particular area, not only on of other people's work, but on our own work, so that we can meet that rigorousness that we're trying to put forth in our program. Plus, how much GIS and spatial analysis is permeated through today's technologies that we use every day, and sometimes just sort of in subtle ways that we don't even recognize, but it's there. So we want to have students engage in this to be critical of their own work and their works to make it rigorous. And to do that, we try to make it recognizable across the classes. Like, how does this class fit into GIS, critical GIS? And so that you can not only understanding it when you go into a class, but see how the classes connect between each other so that you're not just taking a series of classes, you're taking a system of classes that will allow you to make the connections and sort of build this holistic view. We also, during that time, while you were doing this, we want you to build and organize a portfolio of work so that you can keep it all together, so you can think about your journey and tenure through the program and see how it's improved and how it links and how it relates with each other, plus give you technical skills in building such a portfolio that will be of benefit to you out in the workforce, or if you're moving on to further academics. That you will be particularly learning how to use GitHub and how to organize it, and how to create your own portfolio to sell your work and to present yourself to potential employers, to conferences, or any other audience that you might find of value to present these. So as we mentioned, we want you to develop a wide range of technical skills, both in depth and breadth. So there's going to be, we're going to be platform independent in our program, where we are looking to give you an experience in several GIS packages, for example. Our Pro by ESRI and QGIS, both equally, because you do need to use ArcPro as part of getting out there because the pervasiveness of the ESRI software. But not only that, ESRI software has some really, really powerful tools that can come in handy that QGIS may or may not have. But we also want you to be able to use QGIS as an option for your choice in case you need to use some particular tool that links to it, or that it's something that suits you and the nature of the work that you're doing as well. We are going to introduce you to Python and R because those are the two main programming languages out there. Pretty much any analytical specialty requires knowing these languages, and we want to be able to give you both because each has pros and cons to their language. And we want you to be able to be comfortable in both of them so that you can not only market yourself as, hey, I can do both of these. And you're not just putting on your CV, as like, I know these, but you really do know these. You know how to use them. And when you were to come into an employment opportunity, that you're ready to go and that you know which one is good for which one based on what you prefer. One of the key things that we want to do to separate ourselves from other programs is to teach you methods so that you learn to plan and process your analytical projects, whether it be technical, writing programs or writing tools, to doing analysis, to doing project management. The methodological approach that we want to give you is one that says, okay, here's what I'm going to do in a particular order, and allow you to critique those along the way. So it's all part of that critical GIS, where if I build this, will this come out of this? Oh, if not, then I can readjust and everything. But also I've learned over the years that putting together analytical products or technical products often come out better for the audience when you have a methodological approach, because they often come out more refined, more solid. They're built with a purpose in mind, and it's easier to communicate rather than just like, oh, I built this tool and I put this tool together. I did this analysis and then I did this analysis. There's a sort of glue that connects the why and how and what led to what across that time that we think is important, that will allow you to stand apart from other programs. So I already mentioned the R and Python, the other one, and the GIS, those are kind of common. I think I jumped ahead there by mentioning the GIS programs and in conjunction with the languages. So that's number 5. But the other thing, number 6, moving on, we, as Dylan had pointed out in the first couple of slides, we're looking at covering social and environmental subjects as a focus to address modern social issues or modern issues humans face today, whether it be between each other or with the environment. This is something that we want to particularly engage in because there's a whole body of work out there that is emerging and growing quite sizable as it relates to trying to make people's lives better, make the environment better, and have that interaction between the two so that they can build off of each other and thrive. Some of which even involves humanitarian work. Some of the classes that I teach use humanitarian data. And so it sort of fits into that social and environmental, but also takes on that perspective of humanitarian. So we want to focus on these as an attractive feature to our program, that you will gain experience focusing on those, so that when you go out into whatever you're going to do after the program, that you are well steeped in analytical problems and solutions to those topics. So we're not just going to teach you like, well, here's how to do analysis using this data set. There's going to always be a social and environmental aspect to it that is going to continue to build on the previous courses, so that when you leave, it's just like you are a social scientist to some degree in applying GIS. So the 7th and the 8th are kind of a little bit combined, where we are going to show in each of the classes, provide you opportunities to critically and ethically assess your work. Part of the Division of Professional Services core objectives also is the ethical aspects of being a professional. And so that permeates more than just, 1 or 2 classes here or there. When you're thinking critically about your work, whether it be technical or analytical, you will be assessing as like, all right, is this the right thing to do? How is this going to impact other people or the environment? Is it correct to do that? What can I do if I change this? As a way of understanding everything that you do as it goes along. Because when you get out in the workforce or you get into further academics, the decisions that you make do have impact on people. Sometimes they're more near and far away, depending on where you are in an organization. Sometimes you're on the front ends, where you're in it like an agency where you're working on the ground, but sometimes you're up in headquarters or you're making larger decisions, and we want you to understand those particular impacts. So in order to do that, that last one there is to balance objectivity and subjectivity. And this is often something that science programs have sort of tried to shy away from, of dealing with subjectivity. But, over the years, Dylan and I are talking, and we're like, well, when it comes to critical cartography and critical GIS, we've kind of realized, and from a philosophy of science kind of view, is that it shouldn't eschew subjectivity. Subjectivity is important because it's what drives you. It's what your passion is. It's the things that you select that you want to engage in, that drive that subjectivity. But we also like to harness that with objectivities to make sure that you're like, okay, that you eliminate bias and that you control that subjectivity and that passion to just say, all right, I'm going to do scientific work here, and I'm going to let my passion and that subjectivity drive, but I'm going to temper it with objectivity so that we create effective and rigorous and unbiased results that will have more impact and be accepted by more more audiences. So the academic program, Dylan, do you want to take this one from here? Or do you want me to continue on, since you had a busy week with speaking?
Yeah, I don't mind taking this a little bit. Yeah.
Okay.
So the academic program is, again, this is something that's been re-engineered, and we have moved it back to the Catonsville campus. All classes are in person, and we feel strongly that that's one of our value adds to the program. This is not an online program. This is something where we are interested in building cohorts of students so that you have other people that you can work with and learn with in the program. We have 2 different offerings within the program. We have a graduate certificate or post-baccalaureate certificate, which is designed to be as quick as 1 year, 3 courses per semester for 6 courses, or a longer master's in professional studies. The master's program is designed to not only give you the skills, but help you connect with a community partner to do a capstone, a GIS capstone in a team with a client, and learn how to manage expectations with a client around a technical project such as GIS. Lastly, one of the core foundations, and Ron has already mentioned this, is the GitHub portfolio. One of the things that we want to be able to do is document all of the maps that you've done in the program to demonstrate the wide variety of skills that you might be able to bring to a potential future employer or to your existing employer or to perhaps another graduate program. And again, working with a community partner, a client, is a core part of that master's experience. Ron, you want to take this one?
Yeah. So, with that in mind, because we are a professional program, we are many of the courses are taught by practitioners that we draw from the field right now, who are local, who are engaged in various organizations, from nonprofit to the federal government to local governments to academia to private industry as well. Because what we want to do in our classes is give you what you're going to encounter when you get out in the real world, not just necessarily textbook things. Like in one of my classes, I give students raw data, and I don't give them data ready to go. I give them raw data that will allow students to encounter the messiness, the dirtiness, the errors, the issues that come with data and getting it ready. And the same with some of the programming classes. It's just like you will learn, like, here's what goes wrong if R doesn't do this or Python does this, and how to solve those particular problems, from those real world experiences, because we want you to go out there and be ready. It's like, oh, I've seen this before. I know what to do. I don't have the textbook example in front of me. I have this thing that's this data or this program that isn't quite working right or doesn't quite look what I've seen before, so that you are ready to tackle that and know how to find those particular solutions. So with that too, with the topics that we're covering as social environmental issues, even though we're focusing on those, we are taking an interdisciplinary approach, not only in the tools that I mentioned here, but also from disciplines. We are looking to attract people from all types of backgrounds, because geography, really the foundation of this, touches on nearly every physical, environmental, and social science out there in some way. Even the humanitarian disciplines have some geographic aspect to it that can benefit from critical GIS and mapping. That we want to bring together, because no problem is solved alone by staying within one's discipline. It's solved by looking at what is this connected to in other disciplines and trying to find a particular solution. Since these classes are, mostly professional programs, the classes are held in the evenings, either Monday through Thursday from about 6 to 9 p.m. Sometimes there's a little fluctuation from them that allows, starting at 6:30 to 8:30. There's some flexibility, but in general, they're 6 to 9 p.m. To allow for professionals. And some of our students that we are drawing from campus, they come to those classes at 2, and it doesn't allow them to necessarily compete with other classes they need to take as part of their traditional programs. As Dylan said, our courses are in person, where we may have up to 4 classes in any one course that will be online to sort of give a break, deal with issues that arise, or even the weather, which sometimes we have to deal with. But we like to make this in person, because we think that's a tantamount. I mean, actually, research is showing out there that online completely misses some things that students benefit from if they're online versus in person. Plus, our objective is to engage you in those capstone and the project management courses with real partners out there, that you'll be working directly with them, so that you could start to network and you have connections. Like, this is what it's like to work with this type of organization, and benefit from each other. We do allow sometimes electives to be taken from other departments, but only in circumstances where classes are unavailable to fill a track, or they are something particularly beneficial to something that you as the student will focus on. But we do have quite an array of elective courses that we'll go over, that you'll be able to choose from. So we do allow it, but it's pretty limited. But the option is there if it does arise. I sort of already mentioned that students will engage with outside organizations, particularly the Baltimore metropolitan area, because we're also trying to show how our program contributes to the metropolitan region at large. We're not just this entity that exists in there to take advantage of them and the resources they offer, but to give something back to improve the greater Baltimore and Washington metropolitan area. So one of the things that Dylan mentioned earlier is that we drive the idea home of developing superior communication skills, because to be effective, you have to be really good at communicating, that eloquence, that strong but effective communications. And so this is really something that is part of the Department of Professional Services, who place emphasis on this. And we have lots of resources available for not for helping you communicate, but we bring this to the classroom in most of the classes that we have in our GIS program. And it's not just in making maps, although that is our main communication device, in GIS is that, but also in other graphics that support the maps, the writing. Because if we're going to sell spatial ideas and we're going to sell spatial analysis, we really need to be able to communicate to it. And quite frankly, if you're competing with ideas out there for solutions, as all of us want to do, we want to see our ideas come to life, then having that ability to communicate very strongly and very eloquently is going to give you the advantage of putting forth your ideas that not only read better or present better, but also are much more effective at being understood by the audience. So we try to go along with the idea of graphical excellence, something that Edward Tufte from up in University of Connecticut or Tufts University, excuse me, had put forth, but has grown out, particularly even in the Python and R worlds, where people like Hadley Wickham, who has created one of the most used plotting libraries in Python and R, have been successful in communicating. It's just like that graphical excellence. What makes graphical excellence? What sells? So if you look at the maps that are made in the New York Times or the Washington Post, or even online like Vox or Slate, those folks are using graphical excellence methods, and they often link back to a group of authors who have sort of purported this idea. We want to bring that to you as well. This also includes crafting code that makes your code transparent, easy to read, easy to use, and repurpose or allow somebody to step in and make use of again, as well as documenting your processes, your methods. So as we said, methods are a key aspect of what we want to instill in our students so that their products come out stronger and more rigorous and easier to understand than other programs. So what would you as the job candidate look like after the program? Well, you'd be able to say, I have heightened abilities to assess and understand the impact of my work and what it has on society, as well as other ones. I'm not doing this work just because I can. It's because I can do something. I can impact. I know what I want to do and how to do it and make it effective. That in-person aspect that we emphasize in our course, it refines interpersonal skills and allows you to develop positive relationships that are going to make you successful in networking and communicating and being effective in the job that you do. So you'll be able to communicate to higher levels of standards, which can, not only be effective in making your work impactful, but it might get you through the door. A lot more places are asking for writing samples or some sort of communication example as a way to assess how good you are and how well you can be effective. We want to instill that exceptional ability to provide independent judgment. Can you really critique the work that you do? And you can say, yes, I can. I can really assess my work and tell you what its limits are, what its strengths are, and how it can impact society. And that I've thought this through in a well-rounded fashion. So you can also be able to market yourself as, hey, I can use ArcPro, I can use QGIS, I can use R, I can use Python. And there's a number of other programs. Those are our main ones. But, we have remote sensing and satellite image courses that will have the other software programs that we use. And that even within R and Python in the courses that you are going to be taking, you will get different experiences with the various libraries out there, some of the big ones, like I mentioned, ggplot, or I know Dylan uses in his classes Tidyverse. I use this, many of us use the spatial dependence and other map tools and things like that. And each class will give you this opportunity to say, okay, I know how to use R and Python, but I know how to use these specific libraries that will give you a big toolbox to present in as a job candidate. You'll be not just be able to say, I'm just not going to come to work and complete tasks, but deliver work that is exceptional and well put together and thought through. So that's what we see as you being able to take from our program after after you've completed either the certificate or the master's program. So now we're going to move on to the curriculum, and I'm going to let sort of Dylan take back over on this one.
Thanks, Ron. I was just thinking as you were talking, I was like, sign me up. I want you sold me on the program. So in the I'll just add that there's no specific order for the classes. There is a progression of some of the classes that we recommend, and that starts with the GS 666 Just Maps course that Ron teaches, which is an introduction to thinking critically about mapping and that spatial thinking. This is also kind of one of the first courses that you will get an introduction to an array of different geospatial technologies that you might then build on in the other courses. 668 is another class that we hope that students take early on in their career, and this one is currently taught by Eli Poussin, who is a urban planner at the city of Baltimore. He is the author of what's called TidyBalt, which is a R package that brings in data about the city of Baltimore. So this is something that he's developed, and he in that class is designed to encourage students to engage again with what Ron called messy data and clean it up in a way that can be used later on. There are two other courses that we encourage early on: the processing geographic data and the WebGIS development courses, which both of those have other courses that build upon them. So you can see in that second part of the slide that there are progressions for the courses, so there are prerequisites for some of the later courses. So after taking the 666 course, we encourage students to take the 774 course and then the 779. We'll talk about each of these courses in just a second. Let's talk about the required courses for the MPS. There are 18 credits that are required for the MPS. Excuse me. There are 18 credits that are required for the graduate certificate. These courses are the same courses that a MPS student, a master's student, would take in we would recommend them to take in their first year. And those are these 6 courses. So here you can see that we encourage students to take that Just Maps course, the processing geographic data, launching spatial data sets, WebGIS development. This is the core foundation for that graduate certificate. And then for the entire full master's program, there are a plethora of other courses that students can pick and choose to specialize their skill set within the kind of broader array of geospatial technologies. We will also have a variety of one-time kind of seminar courses to touch on different specialized topics depending on or building from the different instructors' expertise. Ron, do you mind talking a little bit about how that's been done in the past?
Yeah, so traditionally in programs, master's and PhD programs, there will be colloquia and seminars offered where guest instructors from private industry or academia or even the government will give sort of 1 or 2 hour lectures on something particular that is related to the program or of interest to students. So what we're doing in the process is setting up a series of these to connect them, because we can only do so much with coursework. And so there's often this in between, particularly since, we're looking at science and technology studies and sort of this scientific aspect and visualizations. We want to bring in industry professionals from government, academia, and stuff you probably we're looking at one a semester that will help glue your classes together and say, oh, I see how these two connect and what this means. And that sort of extra layer of knowledge about what you're learning and how it impacts society, so that you continue to refine those critical thinking skills and connect your program so that it's just not just a series of courses, even if they're related to each other and follow progression. This sort of helps to pull that together and enrich your knowledge base. So with that, I'm going to move into some examples of what students will learn in the various classes that we put together. And connect them to the program. So for critical thinking, for example, in GAS 774 statistics for geographers, many and all programs typically will provide those foundational characteristics, the underlying mechanics of the statistics, advantages and disadvantages, limitations, when to use, interpretation of results. But we in our program, as critical thinking aspect of it, is saying, well, what does that really mean? How do I know when to use these? How do there's a lot of tools out there. When do I use one? And what do they really mean? I mean, we can present like, oh, there's multiple cluster analysis techniques out there. But when do you pick one over the other? And what happens when you apply those techniques, those same techniques to those different techniques to the same data set? What are the choices? What happens when I set this specification of a technique to this and not this? Because in geography, there's this classic problem called the modifiable aerial unit problem that you can never escape. So what does that really mean? And there's a lot to that. So there's a lot of choices to be made. There's a lot of techniques to be used. So what our program does, and particularly this course, is say, all right, here's what happens to the analysis when you make these choices, so that you can compare and understand really what's going to happen. You're not just going to hear it from the instructor to say, oh, if you pick this technique, it's going to do this, and this technique's going to do this. Or if you set up the data this way, it's going to do this. We actually show that. So this is an example from the class where we take several clustering techniques. There are 4 of them that are used in this example, with different ways of specifying the analysis at different geographies. And so we go through and we take those techniques and we quantify and put together a analysis to allow us to assess which one did better in the data that we're using with what particular setup. So you'll get more than just being able to use these techniques. You'll be able to walk away saying, okay, I know how to evaluate these. When you get into a position yourself, you may need to do this yourself, but you will also walk away, even if you never do that, you will have it instilled in your knowledge base how to exactly do what happens when you make these kinds of decisions, because you will have to make them and they're unavoidable, and this will help you get through that. So let's see, sorry. All right, so with just maps, for example, we cover the elements of cartography. Again, all the basics that communication of maps, what's graphical excellence. But we also cover, the subtleties of what maps communicate and the background about the geography to the reader. Comparing analysis of how changing thematic techniques work. Because the big thing about thematic mapping is you've got these 5 or 6 ways of choosing the data to represent your data, and they can all have big impacts on what your analysis communicates. And so we go into depth. Most programs and even most work out on the internet do not really cover this in depth, and we think it's critically important because it really can have an impact on your ideas and your thing. Which can be negative sometimes, but you may not realize that, because in the end, the maps that are being made do have real impact on decisions. I've worked for crime analysis departments and police departments. I've worked in housing and urban development, where I've seen, if I make a map this way, this is what's going to happen on the ground. And if you go to work for maybe for a nonprofit or some other local government agency where your work's going to go directly on the ground, this can be a big deal. So another example of that methodological approach in processing geographic data, we take to us, this is no different than in any other non-geographic data class, spatial data class, or even geography program, where most of the time, any analysis you do is about prepping and cleaning your data. And to do that properly really takes a methodological approach. So we've kind of instilled that here where we like, all right, we've developed in this class a guide of like cleaning and preparing data, how to manipulate tabular records and generating the statistics out of it, and this iterative process that it goes through. So we've kind of cataloged this and we've created an example here where, you know, this is the geoprocessing guide we use in that class. And we tackle things that are not common. There's a lot of geoprocessing tools and techniques out there, and ESRI and QGIS and a lot of programs will show you the basics, but you know, here's one where we have two different geographic layers and we want to create statistics on these as a combination of these two. This is not exactly a straightforward thing. So we take you through how to do that. And we do it methodologically because one of the things that happens to students in these classes is that the instructor kind of takes them down a path and they get so far and they realize, oh, if we didn't really think this through, and now we have to go back and redo our work, or we have to undo some work and it's taken time away. So that's by design so that you can see that kind of impact of what happens if you don't methodologically plan along the way, as well as provide you examples of what happens really when you to more than just the basics that are out there, because you will encounter these as time goes on. So we have a pretty in-depth program for doing this. So technological versatility. This is the class, the 600 class that Eli Poussin teaches, where he's allowing you to use R and QGIS to do modern programmatic methods and reproducible workflows in GitHub and R. Some of which is with the simple features package, but some of his own. As Dylan had mentioned, he's created some the tidy vault. That allows you to do the Baltimore data. So, whoops, I went too fast. So, you know, students will explore varied approaches to creating and accessing spatial data and learn how to be technically savvy at using these particular tools as a way of grounding you in that versatility. And he is doing a lot with this course with local data. So he's, you know, working with the analysis of Maryland Transit and bus networks. With the general transit feed specification, which anybody who works in transportation, this is kind of a big deal. That data is really messy, and anybody who wants to go in this area, having this kind of thing taught in class is pretty critical. I've done it with some analysis that I did from New York City and the LIRR and the larger metropolitan area of subway system, and the turnstile data, because I was using it for COVID, and it's just like, whew, it's a doozy of data to work with. And so Eli tackles that here, and he does it in Baltimore as a way of getting you familiar with these kinds of things. And it really gives you, because that data is so complex, it can really be something else to gain experience with. So, you know, just to finish up with these, facilitating communication excellence and writing quality, I've published a number of things with students. I work with some of my students to try to get them to get their work published out there as a way of moving towards a goal to demonstrate those skills to employers by having an actual product in hand. And there's nothing better than getting something published in a peer-reviewed journal or a popular literature that you can say, I can do this and my work can get through and get published out there. So this is an example of one of it what I did with a former student who's actually now one of our instructors. So in the interest of time, you know, you'll have availability to see these slide decks. We have examples of some of the topics that we work with. This was an analysis of race and ethnicity patterns as it related to mortgage fraud. back from 2008 when the housing bubble had occurred. We used some of this in the class to look at the relationship between race and ethnicity and mortgage fraud, because that was a common problem when it came to people who got underwater from their mortgages and the fraud that was underneath that. Here's a student who is in the Just Maps class, learns how to make effective maps with bivariate maps because they are complex, but they can really be powerful, but there's subtleties to them that can allow you to really be effective. So this is color choice, but also learning how to interpret these grids and these colors in here to really understand what these are communicating and really highlight the pattern. This student did a remarkable job. Named Harrison DeFord. Remarkable job of creating maps that were really effective in highlighting the patterns in this particular example of environmental conditions in relations to COVID. So here's one that was fun. This was from examples that I took from a class where we were doing a location quotient, which is sort of contextualizing data, where the authors successfully got published, but I implemented it in the class by these other authors that was created these specific geographies to capture the differences between tweets between bankers and artists, and those who used in their tweets bro versus hipster as a way of just sort of identifying the differences, the geographic differences of just where people are and what they're saying, and sort of capturing that local vernacular. So we try to make some of the examples in our classes fun, and not just sort of the standard things that you might do. Because I teach about looking at rodent calls for service and in relation to pizza shops, because any of you ever lived in New York City, that's kind of a big thing. So we try to make it fun and looking at the relationships between those. And then finally, looking at foreclosures in relation to concentrated disadvantage. So as you can see from all these examples, these are sort of social and environmental issues that we're trying to wrestle with and give you experience with. And we have a number of general topics that we cover, from general topics of housing, Twitter, LiDAR and satellite image, mobile mapping, Google Analytics, administrative overstuff, to specific like COVID-19, the GFTS, traffic, 311 calls for service, invasive plants, all kinds of things, just to give you an idea of the things that we're covering. So I'm going to turn it back over to Dylan to go over the admission requirements and finish up and allow you some time for question and answer.
The program requires a bachelor's degree at the minimum. We are looking for people that have had some work experience, but that is not necessarily required. We also do not require a background in geography, like Ron mentioned. We are interested in bringing together people from a wide variety of disciplines to engage in, again, what we call spatial thinking, to come up with or address the problems that society currently faces. So again, a background in geography or exposure to GIS is not required for admission into the program. We do require a minimum GPA of 3.0. We do have there is some wiggle room with that, but we are hoping that students, that we attract engaged students, and we use the GPA as a rubric for that. As part of that, we do have we place a lot of emphasis, this is that bottom check mark, we place a lot of emphasis on the personal statement. So if your GPA isn't quite if your undergraduate GPA wasn't quite 3.0, we can please talk about the challenges that you face in your undergraduate and the direction that you are currently going. I want to mention just a couple of other quick things about the admissions requirements. We do not require the GRE, and for international students, we are looking for some form of an English proficiency test whose minimums can be seen on the admissions portal. We also require 2 letters of recommendation, and I think that's pretty straightforward. We're hoping that those letters of recommendation can speak to your interest in GIS, your potential future plans, as well as your engagement with others in the program. I want to talk a little bit about the personal statement here because a personal statement can mean a wide variety of things to different people. What we're looking for in the personal statement is a story about why you want to be in this program. Why do you want to learn GIS? And we're looking for specific examples that might connect to the variety of courses that we've just discussed today, which are also available on the program's website. We want to emphasize, or we're looking for a trajectory towards a career goal out of the program as a way to think about where you want to go with it, right? So we're not looking for, I applied to this program because I didn't know what else to do, but instead I'm applying to this program because I want to affect change by being for example, a mapping reporter for the New York Times, as some students who have taken our classes have become. And it should please talk about your background and how your background will set you up for success in the program. So again, we don't care that you might be coming to this from, say, an English degree or a computer science degree. Tell us how you think that your experience will help push us in that, or push you in towards success in the program. Just a quick note about the upcoming classes that we have. So if you enroll in the program right now, our fall 2023 set of courses are those introductory courses, those first semester courses, just maps, the building spatial data sets, as well as two kind of more advanced courses, the project leadership and management course, as well as the advanced WebGIS course. In previous semester, we offered the first in that series of WebGIS. In the springtime, we're offering the processing geographic data, that first course, that WebGIS development. So again, not the advanced course. A remote sensing course, which is the introduction to satellite image analysis. And one of the courses that students have been raving about, which is the statistics for geographers. So it's a way for students to engage in statistical analysis and mapping to show significant relationships between phenomenon. And that's a course that our esteemed colleague Ron Wilson teaches. Okay, so what we've got, go ahead, Ron.
All right, so what's left to tell you is just a little bit more about how you'll be supported as students. So the Division of Professional Service, DPS, who have been mentioning, they sort of oversee this program. So they're there to support you too, and not just us in the GIS program, because they're dedicated to providing these sort of wraparound services for students. So by helping you to curate special knowledge to build skills and transform, by working with us to build the programs and help to make you well-rounded. They help with career advancement in terms of deciding how to get you into higher level positions within your field or transfer to a career path, because that's what these programs are all designed by. So that first one, the specialized knowledge into career advancement, all sort of gets manifested through the way we have designed our particular program. So those aren't two necessarily things that they do specifically for you, but they have requirements and work with us to develop our curriculum so that you build those specialized knowledge that meet certain criteria and goals, as well as move forward in advancing your career. So that's sort of in the background and what you're seeing in our curriculum and the courses and the choices that we make and what we're going to present to you as learning opportunities. They do though set up networking opportunities for other professionals in the field for which you can participate with and facilitate those through job opportunities, through advertisement, through networking events, so that you get a chance to break out there and meet other folks. Not to mention, the practical experience that you get from working with practitioners in the field as part of our capstone project, or if during along the way your tenure, that we can help you hook up with an organization to do internships or things that allow you to participate in something that adds to your particular experience. They also offer a bunch of resources. So the Office of Professional Programs, which is DPS is part of, there's all sorts of things here, that from writing support to academic planning to providing just sort of a catch-all place to say, here's where you can go for all the things that you need. But we do have writing support and academic planning, career center to help you specifically with developing your path forward. So there's a lot of other things in here, but we can always visit these later if you choose to look into our program. We do class planning, so we have something set up to work with us to say, all right, here's the classes that I've taken. You can keep track of it. And there's other academic forms that we can help to keep you on track and think about, again, methodologically, where am I at in the program and where am I going next, so that you're always planning and starting to build your career. And then these things are readily available at any time. The academic calendars, the academic success, the writing center, all those things. These are actually the links. I just showed you sort of a graphic of all of them. These are the main ones. So, if you review this presentation, these are where you would particularly go. But if you go to our GIS program website or the Department of Professional Services, you'll be able to find these fairly easy. But if you have trouble or you want to know more information, then you can reach out to any one of us, myself, Dylan, or just in general to the admissions operating team, where, it'll go into there and we'll either be contacted or somebody from the Office of Professional Programs will get back to you, and we'll get back to you in short order. So from there, gosh, with the slide deck, I didn't finish it up with a Q&A session, but that's what we're gonna.
All right, thank you so much. If you do have any questions, please feel free to, put it in the chat. Or if there's not that many of us, you could probably unmute yourself to ask your question. We got a few minutes left in our time.
Can you hear me okay?
Yep, we can.
Okay. Good. I'll go ahead and take advantage of this opportunity to ask a quick question.
Okay.
I'm a faculty member at one of the other USM schools, and just thinking about this as a possible new skill set to develop. But I was looking at possibly the certificate program, but I'm not sure I would be able to have the bandwidth to do more than one course a semester. Just wanted to get your opinion about that. That'll be a slower progress, but I'm not rushed. But I was thinking about maybe coming and doing one course a semester.
How's it going? I missed your event last night at Red Emma's.
No, it's tomorrow night.
Oh, it's tomorrow night. I thought it was. I thought it was April 4th. Is it tomorrow night?
It's April 6th. The 6th.
April 6th. Okay. All right. Hey, happy to have you here, and that's totally doable. We have a student looking to graduate next year who has been doing one course a semester.
Okay.
And that would be something, that would just be a conversation that we would have about which course makes the most sense to take, and planning out based off of which courses are offered in which semester. And that would be something that both Ron or I could do with you. I don't know if you have anything that you would want to add to that, Ron.
I just add that, the program's been around for a while, and I've been involved at all pretty much from the beginning. And we've had a number of students do that. And it's worked out for all of them who have continued on in that way. And quite frankly, I've kind of enjoyed it too, because a number of those students, I had more time to develop relationships with them as students in the program, to really help them craft where they're going and really develop their products and stuff. And my experiences with them has been great. So they come back into a class. It's like, unlike somebody who's been in a class, who's on the faster path, are like, hey, good to have in class, but then they go away, and I don't get to enjoy their reports anymore, or the conversations with them about their ideas. in spatial analysis or geography or GIS, because students give back to us that way too, and we take advantage of that in terms of these relationships that we have and talking with them about their work and their analysis and things like that. So there's been a couple of them, as I said, it was like they were there longer and it was beneficial for me too.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll also add, knowing your work, there's a professor who is using some drone technology to do some mapping at cemeteries as a way to produce new records to actually commemorate those individuals that are buried in many of these kind of, as you know, falling apart cemeteries. So that's a little bit out of scope of the certificate, but it might be a cool project to explore or to work with you on as a way to develop kind of specialized skill sets that or direction that you might want to go. I'm happy to follow up with you with the information that I have about that professor.
Oh, that's fascinating. Yeah, that's a UMBC professor or someone else?
That's a UMBC professor, yeah.
Okay.
Again, I'll be happy to follow up with you about that.
Okay, Elizabeth, you just had a question about class size. Classes can range, anywhere from about 7 to 17 is roughly what we do. So we try to keep the classes a bit small because it's typically what graduate classes are. That allows us to give a little bit more one-on-one with students as well.
So, quick question, follow up. So, when you showed the slide that showed the courses for the fall and the courses for the spring, that's the rotation every year. So.
Oh no, some of them will be, but not all of them. We'll have to rotate some in there right now, so particularly the electives, and that we sort of balance every semester as we start to plan. It was like, where are students in the program, who needs what, so that we can try to maximize not only our classes, but get students the courses that they need. So our core courses will particularly follow that pattern, like our Just Maps classes every fall. Statistics for geographers is every spring. And the core courses will sort of follow that same progression, where the elective courses will start to, as we get the program going, start to change in and out between the semesters. And then the plan is that, and then not this coming summer, but the future summers, to start offering, a course in the summer too, so that, there's an opportunity to get those in too, because we've got quite a lot of courses. We couldn't fit them all in during the fall and spring semester.
Okay.
Okay, we also had a question in the chat if somebody could start a certificate first and then go into the master's. And I'll just start with that answer, and then, Ron and Dylan can elaborate if they want to. But yes, you can start in a certificate program. And for the Master's of Professional Studies, those courses can count towards the master's degree. So you can get both the certificate and the master's.
That's correct. And we've had a number of students do that before, and quite successfully, because, they get in there, they're on a path, they particularly know what they have to take for, and they get their experience, and then they decide, it makes it easier to sort of plan it again. And a number of them have been successful. And then, transferring into the program still requires, filling out a little bit of paperwork, but we've seen you. We've seen your performance, and we've also, know you, and we can see your work and just have to follow the regular process of getting into the master's level program. But it does provide that opportunity as well. So.
And Deanna, you had your hand raised.
Hi. Hi. Sorry to cut you off. I just had a really quick question. So I missed the beginning, and I was wondering if you could maybe just give sort of a summation, I guess, of what the benefits of going into earning the certificate versus earning the master's degree would be, and if there's sort of like an ideal candidate for a certificate versus a master's.
Dylan, I'll let you take that one.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll say that there is no ideal candidate for either one. We're hoping that students will apply from, again, a wide background, and then come together, learn a common set of skills, and then, reflect that back out to their kind of domain of expertise. So I will give my kind of personal assessment on the difference between the certificate and the master's. The certificate is generally geared towards people who are going to take that skill set and apply it back to a field that they're already embedded in. And that might be a kind of a geospatial field, but it might be something like library sciences. It could be something like public policy. It could be something like ecology. It could be any number of those things. The master's degree builds a GIS expertise that you're going to go out and know the ins and outs of GIS, and not necessarily apply it in any particular area, but instead be a contributor to kind of a next development of what GIS technologies might exist out in the world. So I would expect or would hope that someone coming out of the master's program might write their own R package or for, say, community development, or they might write their own QGIS plugin so that they can develop something that can be commonly used across other kinds of platforms. That's the way that I separate it out in my head, but there's a lot of blurring between those two things. So again, I think that Elizabeth's question was spot on. It might be advantageous to enroll in that graduate certificate to kind of get your feet wet and understand where you could go, and then figure out if you want to transition into or earn the master's degree.
Yeah, I want to follow up
Yeah.
on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to follow up on that, Deanna, with what Dylan had just said. Is one of the reasons why we've sort of passed our net to emphasize people from not just geography, but anywhere that wants to come and apply these things, and why we've opened the courses up to trying to get other students from other parts of the campus and the traditional programs as well, as it's like, they've got their own focuses of study, but they want to be effective in applying GIS and bringing those skill sets so that they do, that work well with a foundation of not only just GIS, but geography and map making into their particular discipline, as a way of saying, okay, I'm an anthropologist, but I took the GIS certificate course as a way to enhance their skills to make them sort of a spatial expert in anthropology. Or demography is a pretty good example of one of those, and certainly public policy for sure, because we've seen the biggest growth in the social sciences and the use of mapping and spatial analysis over the last couple of decades actually has been in public policy.
Okay, great. Thank you both. This was very informative. I appreciate it.
And that's, I'll also add that that's something that both Ron and I would be happy to kind of sit down and talk with you more, perhaps in a kind of one-on-one meeting, to help map out what your interests are and where you might want to go, and how you can kind of tailor that experience best for you.
Okay, great. And I've got your emails here. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
So I do just want to thank everyone for attending tonight. And if you do have any questions, you please contact us at any of these emails below. And thank you. And we hope you found this informative.
Thank you very much so. Thank you.
Hey, take care.
Thank you.